ልጆች ይሞቱ ነበር ወባም ነበር በዛ ላይ ወረርሽኝ ነበር ያንን ለማቋቋም መቻል አቅቶን በረሃብ ምክንያት ልጆችም ያልቁ ነበር አዛውንቶች ያልቁ ነበር
ብዙ ሰዎች ህፃናቶች በየጫካው ውስጥ ህፃናት ልጆች ተጥለው እናት ወስዳ ጥላ ጠፍታለች አባት ወስዶ ጥሎ ጠፍቷል
Addis Ababa, capital of Ethiopia. A mass of humanity gathers for the festival of Epiphany. Just another face in the watching crowd. Awol Mela knows that the vast majority of those celebrating today will return home to their villages, facing poverty and hardship. He believes that the rich countries of the world have failed Africa, and that the time has come for change.
I often wonder if the rich countries stop patronizing Africans and realize that, given the opportunity, it's Africans themselves who will take the continent out of poverty.
Despite the hundreds of billions of dollars donated and thousands of foreign aid workers, the situation has actually got worse. He doesn't deny the corruption of African governments, but blames the developed world for failing to direct its aid to the people who actually need it on the ground.
I don't know how much of that money has come to Ethiopia. Okay. People say billions and billions. I think it is fair to calculate how much of that has trickled down. The money has been spent in different ways. Salaries, big offices somewhere in Europe, or highly paid expatriates. If that money comes directly to farmers, it can change the way they live.
Awol understands the meaning of poverty. He lost his father when very young, and it was his mother who struggled to find the money to educate him.
Well, we had our own small farms, and she did all what she could to raise me, and I know it was difficult for her. That's why I say she was wonderful. It was not easy at that time to grow without a father, because you should have had, I should have had a model.
As he grew from boy to man, he became increasingly frustrated at the lack of progress in Ethiopia. Decades passed, yet the daily plight of his countrymen appeared stuck in a time warp. He's convinced that a good part of the blame lies at the door of foreign agencies.
Development agencies have the tendency to tell people what they should do. Rather than working with the people, they have the tendency to impose their own thinkings and their own approach, and that has never worked, and it will not work.
He began to ask where was the logic of foreigners building a school in a rural area if there was no health care and the children were too sick or too hungry to attend? Why give farmers free seeds when the topsoil has washed away and nothing will grow? He feels it's time that outsiders who don't understand the real needs of Africans stop imposing their solutions and start asking Africans themselves what they think is needed. Virtually unknown to the rest of the world, 5 years ago, he began a huge experiment in the Sodo region of central Ethiopia. It lies within the Great Rift Valley and has been frequently blighted by famine. His aim, to persuade 250,000 people living here to stop accepting free handouts and work their own way out of poverty. He calls it self-help.
We don't give things free of charge. Giving things free of charge is creating a dependency syndrome. But our philosophy is that if people want to be helped, they have to help themselves. That's really important.
His initial plan was simple. Teach 20 men and women new skills on agreement that they each teach 20 more, their followers, who in turn teach 20 more, and so on. Today, those followers already number tens of thousands. For the last 2 years, our cameras have tracked progress of the experiment. We follow the stories of people like Amini Indele, Mulugeta Hailu, and Amarich Doyo, desperate to succeed where past generations had failed. And we found others equally determined to destroy the experiment in order to protect their own interests. Moneylenders, used to living off the backs of the poor, angry their business is threatened. Thieves robbing the hillsides of what few trees remain. Farmers stealing water from their neighbors. And even a rebellion amongst the people of one devastated region, where the men are refusing to work without free food. Can a Womela persuade a community which has become dependent on foreign aid for over half a century to change its ways? And can they do it for a fraction of the normal cost, without any help from foreign aid workers? Contrary to popular image, many rural areas of Ethiopia are fertile, especially in the wet season. It's a country which should, in normal circumstances, be able to provide enough food for its population. But the lush vegetation and plentiful supply of water obscure a harsh reality. Drought is often just around the corner. When that happens, crops are destroyed, livestock die, and hunger returns. Just ask the people of Sodo region how many have lost family members to famine or disease.
Every one of you.
The major reason behind the Great Famines is the reliance on just one crop, maize. When that fails, everyone is vulnerable. Abule Gizo is a prime example. Life is already hard, but should a drought descend, his family faces months of hunger.
دوها من ناقنيو كزناب بتشاسل هنا سويتشان زناب كليل بقولهم لا يبقى ليش.
The first thing Awomela and his team had to do was counter the constant threat of famine. The answer lay in just one extraordinary plant. Ethiopians call Emset the magic plant. It's one of the most versatile plants imaginable, every part having a purpose. Previously, it could only grow high up in the mountains, but self-help introduced a hybrid for the lowland plains. It needs very little water and can produce bread and dumplings with the residue used for porridge. Even its leaves can be stripped to make ropes. But its most important feature is its longevity. People here can bury the plant for up to 7 years without any spoiling. Just one of these parcels can feed a family of 6 for a month. In times of drought, they simply dig it up, and it's as good to eat as the day it was buried. This was one of the first groups of followers taught insect cultivation to ward off the threat of starvation. They then taught their followers, and today the plant can be found in farms stretching across the region. Survival is one thing, but if the local economy was ever going to change, the farmers had to stop growing just enough food for their own families and start producing cash crops others wanted to buy.
መጀመሪያ በልጅነቴ አትክልቶችን መንከባከብ ወድ ነበር እና በውስጤ ይሰማኝ ነበር ስለ አትክልት ብዙን ጊዜ ወደ ሌላ ቦታ ከማዘወትረው አትክልቶችን መንከባከብ ወድ ነበር ከዛ ስሜት አቋያ የተነሳ ይህንን ስራ ከየተድሉን አገኛለሁ ይያልኩኝ ብዙን ጊዜ ከዛ በፊት ማለትም የተመረጡ ዝርያዎች አይኖሩም ነበር
Mulugeta Hailu was one of the first to be taught how to develop a nursery. Creating a mixture of seedlings, including peppers, onions and coffee, he now sells to neighbours.
አሁን እንግዲህ ስልጠናው እኔ እንደሰለጠንኩኝ እኔ ብቻ ተጠቃሚ ልሁን ብዬ አይደለም
For Mulugeta, sharing his knowledge has become just another part of the business. There's a simple logic. The more farmers he teaches, the more buy his seedlings.
ፕላስቲኩ እንቆርጣለን እና ከዛ በኋላ ምን እናደርጋለን አሁን ይሄ አፈሮችን ይሄ አሁን ጨምረናል ይሄንን እናስገባለን ካስገባን በኋላ እንመልሳለን በጣም ኑሯችን ደካማ ነበር
አናሳ ነበር
እና አንቺ ታስታውሻለሽ ልጆቻችን ማስተማር አንችልም ነበር ደፍተር ይሄናል አንገዛም ነበር አይደል
አንገዛም ነበር ምንም ነገር አልነበረ
አንቺ ደግሞ ወደ ገበያ ስትወጪ ባዶ እጅሽ እንደነበረ ነው አይደል
That's all changing, but in a way that no one here ever expected. Until very recently, Sodo region was, like virtually everywhere else, entirely dominated by men. But in a role reversal the likes of which the continent has never seen, it's women who now control family income. A savings and credit scheme, just like microbanking, has been set up, and only women are allowed to borrow money. Apparently, men could no longer be trusted.
ሴት አጠፋን ለቤቱ ነው ሴት አጠፋን ለቤቱ ነው እየነገደ ነው ወንድ ጠግቦ እየሰከረ እያም እየወደቀ ነው እኛው ይሻላል መጀመሪያ ብድር ወሰድኩኝ እሱ እየሰራው ያለ ከፍት ገዛው እሱ ሰጥቻውንም ወሰድኩ ምግብ ጀመርኩ ሰራው ልጆችን ማስተማር
When Mulugeta's wife Abrihet came up with the idea of building a restaurant in the middle of the countryside, many thought she was mad. But while local incomes rise as the experiment gathers pace, it seems to be working.
ሴቶች ይሻላል ከወንዶች ገንዘብ ለማያዝ ሴቶች ይሻላል ገበያ አለን በጥራት ገበያ አለን በደንብ ሰራለን ገበያ እንሄዳለን እንገዛለን እናመጣለን ቤት እንሰራለን ምግባችን በደንብ ገበያ ንግዳችን በደንብ ሰራለን
Thousands of women have joined the scheme. They borrow money at low interest rates to buy sheep or cattle, or even seeds for their farmer husbands to grow. From those, they make a profit, pay back their loan, and can then borrow more to expand their business. But there's one man who wishes they'd never started, Tadele Fikadu, the local money lender.
መጀመሪያ እኔ በሁሉ ነው መስጣቸው ሙሉ ሰጥቼ ደግሞ ሁሉ ራስ ባጂ እጃቸውን ጠልፍ ወስጄ በመጨረሻ ጠይቃቸዋለሁ ወሩን ሲደርስ ታሳስ ሲደርስ ጠይቃቸውና በመጨረሻ ሲሰጡ ከሰጡኝ ይሰጡኛል ካልሰጡኝ ደግሞ ወደ ፍርድ ቤት ይገባለሁ ክስ ማለት ነው አሁንም ማቆማል በፊትማ እና የንጆ ጋር ይመጣ ኖሮ ያው ፐርሰንት ያው 100% ነበር በዛን ሰዓት የሚያበድሩት የነበረው።
Amarit Doyle was one of the first to join the experiment. Now she teaches her own followers how to stand up for themselves.
ሁለተኛ ራሴ ብዙ ተለውጫለሁ ቤተሰቤንም ለውጫለሁ መጀመሪያ ሴቶች መፍታችንን አናቀም ነበር የቁጠባ ጀምረን ስብሰባ የሚባለው ካየን በኋላ መፍታችን ምን ሀል እንደሆነ ያው አውቀናል ከወንዶች ምን ሀል ጫና እንደነበር ከዛ ደግሞ እንደተላቀቀን ቁጠባው ለራሳችን እንደተጠቀመን የከብት እርባታ ብዙ ነገር ከብቶች አዳቅለው ዘመናዊ የከብት ዝርያ እንዲያገኙ ዶሮች እንዲያረቡ አትክልት ፓፓዬ ማንጎ ንቡ ደግሞ ዘመናዊ ቀፎ ከባህላዊ ቀፎ ወደ ዘመናዊ ቀፎ እየለወጡ በጣም ደስ የሚል ማር ነው ከዚህ አንዳንዱ ቀፎ 40 ኪሎ ማር ነው የሚገኘው
Despite no formal education, it's Amarit who now travels to the local town to negotiate new funds for the women's cooperative. Something which would have been unheard of just a few years ago.
Amarit is a great personality. She is really extraordinary. At the beginning, when we came here, most of the women we see were shy. But I think slowly the shyness has disappeared. Amarit should be proud because of her hard work. She has given opportunity to her children, and there is no better reason than this.
በጣም ጎበዝ ነች ባለቤቴ በጣም ጎበዝ ነች በሐሳብ እንግባባለን ማንኛውም ነገር መሰራት የሚገባው ነገር እንድትሰራ ብትጠየቅ በጣም ጎበዝ ነች ልጆቿን ለማስተማር ልጆቿ ከጎጂ ባህሎች እንዲወጡ ከስራ ጥሩ ነገር እንዲሰሩ ሃይማኖት ተምረሽ ስትጨርሺ ምን መሆን ነው የምትፈልጊው አንቺስ ዶክተር
ምን ታደርግልኛለህ ምን ታደርግልኛለህ
መምህር
አይደል ኤፍሬም ይያንተስ
አንተስ ፓይለት fantastic አንቺ ነሽ አንበሳ
ፓይለት ሆኛለሽ
With family planning a key part of the experiment, for the first time in living memory, the birth rate in this region is beginning to fall. But if Amarit's children are to get the chance to fulfill their aspirations, they'll be forced to leave the region. There's only an elementary school nearby. The nearest high school is 30 kilometers away, and only a very few parents can afford to send their children there.
Boy! 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 The boy!
The local people have been raising money to build one, but it's still a distant dream.
What's this? The boy! Again?
An area of land has been set aside for the project, but the school will have to wait. Through the morning mist on a mountaintop high above the Great Rift Valley, worshippers gather to pray. As the mist clears, one of the most devastated regions of Ethiopia emerges below. This is the area of Sodo region known as the watershed. When the wet season arrives, vast amounts of precious rainwater rush off the mountainside, ripping the topsoil from the land before pouring uselessly into a distant river. an area which used to be lush with vegetation has become almost a desert. Over 10,000 people rely on just one well, and the nearest water has to be pumped from almost 300 meters below the surface.
Once that area was densely forested, but as time passed on, the trees were gone. The topsoil, which is important to grow crops, was exposed to erosion, and farmers in that area were not able to grow food.
Something has to change, but Awol Male is determined that the farmers must do it themselves. From all over the watershed area, they've come together to block the water rushing off the mountain, forcing it to seep into the ground. Only that way can they begin to raise the water table to a level where they can get to it easily.
እንደምታውቁት የአካባቢ የተራቆተ ነው እና ይሄን አካባቢ መልሶ እንዲያገግም ለማድረግ የእያንዳንዱ ህብረተሰብ ተሳትፎ ያስፈልጋል። በዚሁ መሰረት ጥሪያችንን በራሳችሁ ተነሳሽነት ጭምር አክብራችሁ እዚህ ስለመጣችሁ በመጀመሪያ ደረጃ በጣም እናመሰግናችኋለን። ለሁላችሁም አንድ ያለ ሞቅ ያለ ምስጋና።
ስራዎችን ሲያከናውን ነው ያለው። በአጠቃላይ በዚህ አካባቢ የተለያዩ ስራዎች ነው የሚሰሩት። እንግዲህ አካባቢው በኤሮዥን ወይንም በጎርፍ የሚጠቃ ስለሆነ ያንን ለመከላከል የተለያየ ስራዎች ነው የሚሰሩት። አንደኛው የፊዚካል ኮንሰርቬሽን ሜዠር የሚባለው ወይንም የተለያዩ ይሄ በድንጋይ ጎርፍን የመከላከል ዘዴዎች አሉ፣ ትሬንቾች አሉ። ሌሎች ደግሞ ፖንድ እየተቆፈረ ውሃው አፈሩን አጥቦት እንዳይሄድ የመከላከል ስራዎች ይሰራሉ። ሌላው ደግሞ ስነ ህይወታዊ የአፈርና ውሃ ጥበቃ ስራዎች አሉ። ያም ተከላን ያካተተ ነው። ዛሬም እንዳየነው የተለያዩ ችግኞችን ነው አርሶ አደሮች ሲተክሉ ያሉት። እነዚህም አፈርን ለምነት የሚጨምሩና የአፈር በጎርፍ ታጥቦ እንዳይሄድ የሚከላከሉ የተለያዩ ስራዎችን ሲሰሩ ነው ያሉት። በአጠቃላይ ይሄ ስራ ሁለት ጠቀሜታ ነው ያለው። አንደኛው
In the past, work was rewarded with free food from other agencies in return. But Awol's determined to get them out of their dependency syndrome. Behind the scenes, though, some of the farmers' leaders are far from happy.
መለመን ምን ያህል አሳፋሪ እንደሆነ ሁላችንም እናውቃለን። ነገር ግን እዚህ ውስጥ ያስገባን ምንድነው? ድህነታችን ነው። እንዴ መሰለህ፣ በእርግጥ የምንደክመውም እርሻው የምናርሰው ለምርት ለማግኘት ነው፣ ስንዴ ለማግኘት ነው። አንሰራ ይሰራልን ካለ ስንዴ መደበልን እንደመጀመር።
Things aren't going well either for Amarich Doyo and her fellow committee members on the Savings and Credit Scheme. Some women have failed to pay back the money they borrowed. The committee will have to decide either to give them more time or send them to court. If they take no action, others will think they can get away with it too.
በዛ መሰረት ደግሞ ወቅቱ ያለፈ ብድር ነው አዘነጋሽ ሰጠኝ። ይሄ ብድር ወቅቱን ያለፈበት ጉዳይ ለምንድነው?
ያው ወስጄ ቁጠባዬንም መዳይንም እየከፈልኩ እየሰራው ነበር። ከዛ በኋላ ልጆችና ነኝ ልጆችን ማስተምራለሁ። ቤት በላይ ላይ ቢወድቅብኝ ያ እየሰራው ቁጠባዬንም እየከፈልኩ ዳይንም እየቀነስኩ መቼም ቤት ሲዳስብኝ ወይ እንዴት
ያው ለለት ተንቀሳቀሱበት ስሩበት ብለን ነው እንጂ እንስራበት ብለንና ለውጣችንን እንታይ ራሳችንን መቻላችንን እንወቅ ብለን ነው እንጂ በብድር ተበድረን ወስደን ያለቅድ ቤት ስሩበት አላልንም። ስለዚህ አሁን የአግባብነት ያሌለው መልስ ነው የሰጠሽን ብዬ ነው እኔ እንደኔ የማየው።
ለቤት ማድረጉ ጥሩ እንዳልሆነ ነው እንደኔ የማየው። ግን አሁን ያው ብትከፍል እንደከፈለች ነው ባትከፍል ያው በህግ ንብረቱን ለማህበሩ እንደሰጠው
ሲግን ብር ግማሹ ከፍለሽ ግማሹ ያው 800 ከምናምን ብር ተበድረሽ 424 ብር አለብሽ። ያው 3 ወር አልፎታል። ይሄስ ብር እንዴት ሳልከፍል የቀረሁት ስሰራም ስከፍልም ስቆጥብም ነበርኩኝ። ከመሃል ልጅ ታመመብኝ። ልጅ ሲታመምብኝ መቼስ በጄ ፈራንክ ስላለ ሌላ ቦታ ሄጄ አልተበደርኩም። በጄ ያለውን ይዤ ልጅ ይዤ ሆስፒታል ሄጄ
It's decision time.
እና ኮሚቴው ይህንን ሁኔታ ተረድቶ በጊዜው ገደባቸው እንዲከፍሉ ወስኗል። እኛም ስማችን ከላይ የተዘረዘሩት ወቅት ያለፈበት ብድር ያለብን ባንከፍል ለመንግስት 100 ብር ለማህበሩ 150 ብር ጨምረን እንከፍላለን ስንል በየፊርማችን እናረጋግጣለን።
They've been given 3 months longer to pay. Should they fail, they'll face court action, and they all have to sign their agreement to this. Keeping a tight rein on the little money they have is important for lots of reasons, not least because of the need to raise funds for the high school and other vital projects. Solomon Kabele has recently been made head of the new health clinic in the town of Kabele. Catering for up to 40,000 people, it's the first of its kind in Sodo region. Previously, these patients would have to walk 20 kilometers to get proper medical care.
ህብረተሰቡ የተወሰነ ፐርሰንት በገንዘቡ እና በጉልበትም አስተዋጽኦ አድርጓል እና ህብረተሰቡ ምን ይሰማዋል? ደስተኛ ነው። በማንኛውም ሰዓት መጥቶ አገልግሎቱን ያገኛል። የባለቤትነት ስሜት አሁን የራሱ ነው ማለትኛል ይጠብቀዋል ግቢው ነው።
Before the clinic, local people were at the mercy of drug sellers, charging up to 10 times what the drugs were actually worth. Now, through their own funds, they get them virtually at cost. It's a similar story at the regional hospital, which again, the people themselves built. When self-help first came to Sodo, they struck a deal with local government. If the people gather money and help build schools and hospitals, the authorities will pay staff and maintenance costs.
Due to the absence of a hospital around, the people were obliged to go to either to Addis 150 kilometers or to Hosanna from Butajra 100 kilometers. You can imagine how serious was the health problem in this area.
Over 1 million people, including many outside the self-help area, can now use its facilities.
Major diseases of the region are mainly of that of respiratory, like TB, pneumonia, and malaria. Malaria also is prevalent in most of the lowland areas. It is the community's commitment that was giving us energy to achieve this hospital construction and give service to the community itself.
But while the hospital is running smoothly, elsewhere in Sodo, not everything is going to plan. The watershed project is in imminent danger of collapse. Just 18 months before, the water table lay almost 300 meters below the ground. They dug dams and trenches to allow rainwater to seep into the ground and the table to rise.
The water table increased to 30 meters. As time goes on, still the water table will increase and probably to 10 meters and 15 meters, so that farmers will be able to access water very easily.
Before the project began, farmers were getting free food from America and Canada for any work they did, The woe wants them to work without handouts.
The majority of farmers have accepted it, and in fact they have worked quite a lot. Some farmers who are trying to bring problems so that the others should not do this without food aid.
A meeting of the Farmers Committee has been called, and a woe has brought his own team with him.
እኛው ከረጣም በኋላ ህብረተሰቡ ይህንን ነገር እንዲቀበለን አልቻለም። ምክንያቱም ስንዴ ለምዷል እና እርሱ አሁን የብርሃነት መስፋፋትን አስፈድደው ወደ ልማት እንዲገቡ እንዲነግሩ ነው።
ሰርተን ያ ጥቅም ስናጣ ሰው በቃ ያ ጥቅም ስላጣን በመጀመሪያ በዚህ ጥቅም ሰራ።
ስለዚህ እነኚህ ችግሮች እስካልተወገዱ ድረስ የኛውም ድርጅት ስንዴው እስካልሰጠን ድረስ እኛ የማንን መሬት ነው የምናለመው? አንሰራ።
The main rebel, Jemba Adane, hasn't even bothered to turn up at the meeting.
ለግድ ውስጡ ከጥቅም ጋር ስለተያያዘ መስራት ያለ ፍላጎት የለንም። ምክንያቱም የግድ የሚከፈል ነገር ስለሌለ ማለት ነው።
It's easy to see why he's reluctant. No matter how much Awol's people tell him the water table is rising, he can see no evidence on the wasteland that surrounds his home.
ምግብ ለስራው ከውጭ ሊመጣ አይችልም በየጊዜው። አሁን በምንድነው የምንስማማው ያለ ምርጫ ይህ ቦታ ወደፊት በረሃ ከሚሆን ልጆቻችሁ ከሚቸገሩ ካሁኑ ከዚህ ቀደም የነበረው የአየር ጠባይ ለመለወጥ መታገል ያለብን ይመስለኛል። ካልታገልን ካሁኑ በረሃ ይሆናል። ሰውም እንስሳም ዛፍም ሊኖርበት አይችልም።
Some farmers begin speaking out in support of Mela.
ምንድነው የሚያረጋን ያው ስንዴ የውጭ እርዳታ ከቆመብን እኛ መሞታችን ማለት ነው። እሱ እየጠበቅ አንሰራም የምንለው ለምን መስራት አለበት ሁላችንም።
The meeting breaks up without resolution.
ሰላም ናችሁ ወይ? ሁሉ ሰላም? እሺ እናንተ ብዙ ናችሁ?
If Jemba Adane's protests get wider support, the entire project could be in jeopardy. The man who spoke in favor of working without free food is Amini Ndele.
ያው ስንዴ የለመደ ሰው ስለሆነ ያኛው ማውን ይመጣልኛል በማለቱ ነው ለማመጥ የቻለው። እኔ እኮ ምንድነው በፊት ይሄ ነገር ሳይጀመር ምንድነው እኔ ራሴ ነበርኩት እዚህ አካባቢ አልነበርኩም። የነበርኩት ወደዛ የቀን ስራ ነው እንዲሁም የምሰራው ነበር። በቀን 3 ብር የሚሰራ ስራ ነበር እሰራው ነበር። እዚህ አካባቢ እኮ ሰው አልነበረም እንትን ነበር ሻለቆ ነበርም ያው ፊትን ዳቅሽ ያለው መንገድም አልነበረም። ቦቅሎን ከብቶቹም የማይሄድበት ነበር። እዚህ አካባቢ የአፈር ከተጠበቀ በኋላ ምንድነው ወደዚህ ገባው ታው እኔ በፊት እዚህ አካባቢ ማንኛውም ነገር አታክልት ያናቀውም ነበር። ቦቆሎና ዘንጋዳ የሚባል ነገር ብቻ ነበር የምዘራው።
If the farmers at the watershed could work together, Awol knows that they could have the same success as others. All over the region, workers' cooperatives have sprung up. This land was barren before self-help introduced an irrigation system.
ጥሩ ነው። በርግጥ ተነበረው በፊት መቼም በግብርና ነው የምንኖረው። አሁን መቼም ኑሯችን እየተሻሻለ ምን መገበው ነገሮች ብዙ ነገሮች እያሻሻል ጥሩ ነው እየተመገብን ነው ያለነው።
የተለያዩ አትክልቶች ድንች፣ ቲማቲም፣ ሽንኩርት ያው ያችን እየኮተኮትን ለገበያ አቅርቦት እንትን እንላለን እንሸጣለን። ይሄ ነው የምንሰራው።
ከዚህ በፊት ያው ሰልፈት ዲቨሎፕመንት ኢንተርናሽናል ሶዶ ፕሮጀክት ከመግባቱ በፊት ያው ያንዳንዱ አርሶ አደር በሽንኩርት ባይ ቢታይ ያው አንድ ኩንታል ሽንኩርት እየተከለ ነበር የሚተዳደረው። በአሁኑ ሰዓት ግን አንድ አርሶ አደር እስከ 20 ኩንታል ሰልፍ ባደረገለት ሙያዊና ያው ስጦታ ባደረገለት ከፍተኛ የሆነ ተጠቃሚ ሆኗል።
Back at the Self-Help Regional Office, the team have hardly had time to focus on dealing with the watershed rebellion when another crisis arises.
Well, we got a problem. Farmers are stealing water from other farmers, and we have to go and fix it right now. There is a big problem down there, and unless we solve it, it will get more problems than it will solve.
The irrigation system had been introduced to help a large group of farmers maximize their growing, even in dry periods. It's changed not only the landscape, but the lives of those living there. But apparently, one of the cooperative's members has been sneaking out at night to divert extra water to his own plot. What may seem to outsiders a small local issue is a matter of survival here. Once again, our wool has to try and stop things getting out of hand.
አሁን ቆሟል። አሁን ቆሟል። የትኛው ነው የሰረቀው?
ያኛው እየሰረቀ እንሂድ
እዛ ጋር
በቶሎ እንሂድ ቶሎ
ጥሩ አይደለም። ለምንድን ነው እዛ ትርያሉ አንተ
በልሽ አሁን አትጣሉ። አሁን ችግራችሁ ምንድን ነው? እኛን ችግራችሁ ምንድን ነው? አቁሙ።
ያው እየሰራን አይደለም። አሁን አቀረ
ለምን ተይሰው አትወስዳላችሁ እናንተ?
አሁን ምንድን ነው መሰላችሁ? አሁን ይኸውላችሁ ተራ በተራ እንነጋገር። ፕሮግራም አለ።
አሁን አይደለም። አሁን አትጣሉ። ኑ እናንተ እዛ ቦታ ሄደን እንወያይ። ኑ
እንወያይ። እዛ ጋር
በደንባችሁ መሰረት
ለምንድን ነው 20 የሰረቀው አንተ?
እኔ በትክክለኛ ውሃው መስረቄ አትክልቱ ቢቃጠልብኝ
አትክልቱ የሚቃጠልብህ ከሆነ ያኛው አትክልት አይቃጠልም?
መቼም ምንም መቼስ ምን ላድርግ ብለሃል? ታዲያ አትክልት
ተራን ጠብቀህ እንዴት አታጠጣ?
The other farmers want to throw the thief off the irrigated land.
This cooperative has brought life to the people here. And if the man is thrown out, he is going to lose all the privileges as a committee member. And he will go back to poverty again. This is the worst kind of penalty they will put on him.
And this is what it's all about. The entire region has been transformed by individual entrepreneurs and farmers working in cooperatives. Average incomes have quadrupled, and everywhere, exotic produce rarely seen in this part of the world before is for sale. Even the government's own taxman has come down to collect. But those outside the project can only dream of such things. Remember Abule Kizor, who grows only maize and whose family exists on bread alone? That's because they live on the wrong side of the road, literally. On the other side, Habte Agor's farm falls just within the self-help borders. He too once lived on nothing but bread, but now grows onions, peppers, potatoes, and a whole mixture of cash crops he sells to the market. Through the profit he made, he's just had a waterhole dug in his field, ensuring that even a severe drought won't destroy his crops. His family live well, and his children go to school. Like millions of Africans, Abule simply wants the same chance.
ለመለወጥ የምልሽ እነሱ አሁን እንደነሱ ከተሰራለኝ እኔ መለወጥ እኔም እንደነሱ ጉልበታ ላይ መስራት አያቅተኝም።
Self-help is about to expand their project, and Abule is desperate to be included. It's not just about survival. It's about pride.
አረ በጣም ፈልገዋለሁ እኔ በጣም ነው ደስ ብሎኝ የነሱን አይነት አግኝቼ በሰራ ኖሮ ነው የኔ ያልፍልኝ ነበር እኔ ይሄ ልብስ ለብሼ አልሄድም ነበር እኮ ብዙ ነገር ቤት ልሰራ እችላለሁ ቤተሰቦቼም ልብስ ምን ለመለወጥ እችላለሁ ሁሉ ነገር በሮችም አርስበት የራሴ የሚረዱኝ ነገሮች አደርጋለሁ ጥሩ ጥሩ ምግብ ለመብላት ሙከራ አደርጋለሁ ለቤተሰቦቼም ንጽህና ለመጠበቅ እሞክራለሁ
Compare his plight to Amarit Doyle. With the profit she's made from selling her farm produce, she's paid for a well to be installed in her garden. Now she proudly shows it off to her 20 followers.
ያውላችሁ ይሄንን ዋኔ እንግዲህ እዚህ አካባቢ ላይ ውሃ ወለድ በሽታ ያው ብዙም በውሃ ወለድ በሽታ እየተጠቃን ነበር ያው እንግዲህ ጃርዲያን የመሳሰሉ ራሱ በቃ ምን ልበላችሁ ብዙ ነገር ታይፎይድ ምናምን ያው ከውሃ እንትን ብክለት የተነሳ ነው የሚመጣው አሁን ከዚህ በሽታ ሁሉ ነፃ ነን ለሐኪም ከምንከፍለው ኑሯችን ከሚባክነው
These are exciting times too at the Hailu family restaurant. A new roof is in place, new furniture on order, and, highly unusual in this part of the country, the traditional mud floor is being replaced by a solid one made of cement. For Abrihet and her husband Mulugeta, life today has changed beyond recognition. But this is a couple who have made a virtue of waiting for great things to happen.
ያው እንደ የወለድሽበት ጊዜ ታውቂዋለሽ አይደል ብዙ ካገባን በኋላ ቆይተን የወለድነው
በእንትን ባገባሁበት 7 አመት ምረት ወለድኩ ከሱ 15 አመት እሷ ቆየች 4 አመት ከሱም ኤልያስ ተወለደ
አሁን ብዙ ለውጥ አንተሰና እና በጣም ነው እኛ እንግዲህ ደህና ነው አይደል
ደስ ብሎናል
ደስ ብሎሻል አይደል አንደና ነው
They are great husbands and wives, let me tell you. And they are the shining star for that community. And the community has seen them coming out of poverty. And they are a good example. As long as people work hard, they can come out of poverty.
And the children of the region have something else to look forward to themselves. Today is a proud day for the people of Soto. Thousands have come together because, at last, enough money has been raised to lay the foundations of a very special building. The new high school is about to take shape. For over 3 years, they've been raising funds through selling food from their farms, making clothes, and even collecting door to door. They did it themselves, and now, at last, they're about to see the reward for their efforts.
My goodness, it's a great day for all of us. I am really delighted to have such a number of people to come here.
But not everyone is celebrating. 3 months have passed, and 2 of the 6 women who had failed to pay back their loans to the Women's Cooperative couldn't meet the new deadline. Woinsha Demisi used the money she borrowed to open a restaurant to provide for her 2 children, one of them disabled.
ቀኑ ደግሞ አሁን ያው እየደረሰ ስለ ያው ባለቤቴም ያው ሁለት ቤት ነው የሁለት ቤት ማስተዳደር ያው ችግር ስለሆነበት ነው ያው ባለው ትንሽ ቀለብ ይረዳኛል
Previously, Bertukan Mola was doing well selling goods at the market until her husband threw her and her children out of their home after an argument.
አንድ አመት ከምናምን ወጥቻለሁ ቤቱን አንድ አመት ከምናምን ወጥቼ ቁጭ አልኩ ውጭ። ያው ልጆቼንም ማበላቸው ሳጣ ያንንም መንዝሬ ጨረስኩት። በእጄ ያለ ገንዘብ አለቀ። ምንም የለም። እሰራለሁ ልጆቼን አስተምራለሁ። ልጆቼ የሚቀልብልኝ የለም። ልጆቼ የሚያስተምርልኝ የለም።
እንግዲህ ያው የብድር ኮሚቴውና የስራ አስፈጻሚ ኮሚቴ እናንተ እንዲጠራ የቻለ ያው ከዚህ በፊት ስንት ነበር የተሰበሰበው? በ22 ሁለተኛ ወር ላይ ጥቅምት ላይ ማለት ነው እስከ ታህሳስ 30 እንከፍላለን ያለብን ብድር ስትሉ ነበረ። እዚህ ላይ ፈርማችሁ የሄዳችሁት ካለው
As before, Amarich Doyle is concerned that others may fail to pay unless the committee takes a tough stance.
አሁን ደግሞ ያብር ተመልሶ ባይገባ ሌላው ተበዳሪም እንደዛ ነው ብሎ ላይ ከፍል ይችላል። ብሩ ያው ተንቀሳቃሽ ኑሮ ንብረት ቢኖራቸው እንዳላቸው ባይኖራቸውም በንድ በቃ ዋሳቸው ተገዶ ራሱ ንብረቱ እንዲመለስ ቢከሰሱ ነው።
It looks as though both women will face legal action. Their children may be forced to leave school and end up on the streets. Then a final compromise is found. They'll be allowed 2 extra months to pay, but only if they can find another guarantor stead.
እኔ በጣም ደስታ ተሰምቶኛል። በጣም ማህበሬንም ድርጅቴንም ማህበር ሴቶችን በጣም አመሰግናለሁ። ችግሬን ሁኔታን ስላዩና ይሄን አይተው ስለሆነ
Back at the watershed, the progress of the work done before the rebellion can be seen as green vegetation begins sprouting again over the plains. Awol Mela has been working desperately to bring the farmers back. As he looks around, he notices that the ringleaders have not turned up. But those who have seem determined to continue, even without them.
እኔ በጣም ደስ ብሎኛል። እኔ ግን መንገደኛ ነበርኩኝ። አሁን ይሄ ያየው አላልፈም ብዬ መጣሁኝ። ይሄን ስላየው ደስ ብሎኛል። ይሄ ልምላሚ በጣም ደስ ብሎኛል።
ታች ያለው መሬት ምንም ላያበቅል ይችላል። ይሄ ነገር እንዴት ነው የምንመልሰው የሚለው ነው አሁን ጥያቄ። እናንተ ካልተባበራችሁ ቢያንስ በጉልበታችሁ በእውቀታችሁ ካልተባበራችሁ ታች ያለው መሬት ታች ያለው አፈር ይህ ካልቆመ ደግሞ ይሄ ቦታ በረሃ ነው የሚሆነው። በረሃ ከሆነ ደግሞ ማናችሁም እዚህ አትኖሩ።
Although there's still no sign of the ringleaders, hundreds have turned up to dig the next barriers to the flooding waters. Then, without warning, Jember Adane and the other would-be rebellion leaders come walking up the hill, digging tools in hand.
እያየው ስለሆነ የግድ ያንን ጉዳት እኔን እየጎዳይ ስለሆነ ወደ ድህነት አረንቋ ውስጥ የከተተኝ ስለሆነ ተለውጬ ያለውንም ያካባቢው ንብረተሰብ ለውጬ
Without a foreign aid worker in sight, and for 30 times less than the cost of a similar project of this magnitude, almost 250,000 African people are grabbing the opportunity to get themselves out of extreme poverty. The markets are full of new products, and a new generation of entrepreneurs is building for the future. New schools are rising from the earth to raise the aspirations of the young, along with hospitals and clinics, dramatically improving the health of the region. Even the threat of famine has been greatly reduced with the introduction of an almost magical plant. Africans helping Africans. Neighbours helping neighbours. Immense pride returning to a people who are changing their own destinies. Yet, Not far outside the self-help borders, poverty is there for all to see. These people are asking, why not us?
Nobody knows the problem better than the Africans.
ልጆች ይሞቱ ነበር ወባም ነበር በዛ ላይ ወረርሽኝ ነበር ያንን ለማቋቋም መቻል አቅቶን በረሃብ ምክንያት ልጆችም ያልቁ ነበር አዛውንቶች ያልቁ ነበር
ብዙ ሰዎች ህፃናቶች በየጫካው ውስጥ ህፃናት ልጆች ተጥለው እናት ወስዳ ጥላ ጠፍታለች አባት ወስዶ ጥሎ ጠፍቷል
These people are asking, why not us?
Nobody knows the problem better than the Africans.